I don't know how to deal with this after 28 years of marriage, affair with his brother's wife. I'm 55 and my husband is 50. We have been together 28 years, most of them happy. We have 3 grown-up children. I am disabled due to a degenerative disease. My husband has always been controlling but not abusive. Just a bit of background info. In September, my husband went on a 2-week holiday with his brother and his wife and daughter to Corfu. I stayed at home due to dog care and TBH expense. We couldn't afford for both of us to go. On the first night, I get a frantic phone call that he wanted to come home as his brother's wife was drunk and, in his words, acting inappropriate. I told him to go to bed and deal with it in the morning. The next day, he played it off as nothing and he had overreacted, but I just knew something had happened. Over the course of the 2 weeks, every time he rang home, all he talked about was her. Weird considering he couldn't stick her for years. On his first night home, he was grumpy and snappy and actually called me by her name when he awoke from a nap. Since then, he has spent half his time at his brother's, his excuse wanting family time and football, but doesn't return till Monday afternoon. Weird as his brother leaves to go to work at 7 in the morning. Over Christmas at my mom-in-law's, they kept wandering off, whispering etc. He had left his messenger logged on my Kindle and she sent him a message on Boxing Day saying, "I wish you were inside me right now." But it was deleted before I could screenshot. They message each other constantly but delete anything incriminating, e.g. today she sent, "Can't wait to tongue you." I'm so stressed and want to tell him to duck off, but I know he will gaslight me unless I have proof. Everything is in my name: car, house and disability benefits, so he wants his cake and to eat it. Same with her. His brother takes care of everything, working 9 hours a day. I feel like I am about to have a breakdown, putting on a normal face every day. There is so much more, but this post is too long already. Thanks in advance for taking the time just to read this. Redditor's reactions update after. Redditor 1, I would meet with a brother and tell him. You don't need to provide your husband with proof. You know the truth. Redditor follow up, yup, this. Up, you aren't a cop to need evidence. It's best to blindside them now. No point trying to reconcile or anything. Hire a pie. Start seeing lawyers. Once you have evidence, file for divorce. Then tell his brother. Show the proof. It takes a whole different level of an asshole to betray your own brother. Ask him to also put on a brave face for some time and file for divorce. Once you both have filed for divorce, hire a bike messenger, they're pretty cheap, and serve them while they're together and attach the evidence also. At the same time, tell all your friend, family, co-workers, don't let them lie and rewrite history. Pack up his things and send it to a storage facility or something. Change the locks. All this while they receive the papers and are panicking. Then only contact through lawyers. Good luck. Redditor 2, find a way to convince the brother to come home randomly in the middle of the day when your husband is gone. Let him catch them. Redditor 3, you are not required to prove anything. You know what is going on and so does he. Tell the brother. If you don't want to be with your husband anymore, divorce him. That is the only justification you need. Know your rights. Consult a lawyer before informing your husband. Update, the aftermath of confronting husband over cheating with his brother's wife. I have had my suspicions since September that my husband, 51 of 28 years, was sleeping with his brother's wife, 62, but was having problems getting proof. As when I had expressed that this relationship was making me uncomfortable, he basically said I was paranoid and crazy to even imagine that. Thanks to a Reddit member, I started using screen record to monitor them messaging each other, as despite them deleting the inappropriate ones so fast, I still had them. Eventually on Saturday just gone, I snapped and told him I knew. He obviously needed it first, but when I started saying what I had seen, e.g. her to him, "I wish you were inside me right now," which she sent on Boxing Day whilst we were all together as a family. He eventually admitted it and gave every excuse in the cheater's handbook. He loves me, not her. He was drunk. She means nothing. He has no clue why it happened. Plenty of tears over me being the most important part of his life that he cannot live without. You get the picture. The problems is he will not leave, despite me asking over and over, even for a few nights just to give me some time to decompress. As far as I am concerned, our marriage is over. I have contacted a solicitor for advice, but I cannot legally or physically make him go. We live in a very small, one-bedroom disability bungalow as I have a degenerative disease and can no longer walk. I feel like I am going to have a complete breakdown. Every time I look at him, I see them having sex. I am not sleeping, my hands are shaking constantly. I have that feeling when your stomach drops when you think you have lost your purse times 10. He is hovering around me, trying to hug me, acting like husband of the year, doing all the stuff he has neglected since he began the affair. I just do not know what to do. I really can't carry on much longer. Thanks in advance for any support or advice. Edit. Thanks everyone for your support. A quick update. My brother-in-law knows about the affair. He was devastated, but his wife really doesn't give a shit. She has said when he asked if she wanted to be with my husband, that she doesn't know. She wants to wait and see what happens between us. My husband has turned himself into a martyr. She came on to him. He never cared about her. He cannot live without me. His life is over if I don't stay with him. He still refuses to leave but has started gaslighting, saying that I could have stopped the affair if I had made him stay at home. What an absolute dick. That since my brain surgery 3 years ago, my personality has changed, that he will not listen if I say it is over, that I must give him a chance, blah blah blah. The problem is that due to my disability he has a captive audience. I am unable to leave and he really is emotionally bombarding me day and night, hugging me despite me telling him not to touch me, hovering around just staring at me, sitting in the dark and also doing every odd job that he has neglected for months. I am ready to have a nervous breakdown. I have just been agreeing with him so he will just leave me alone. Redditor's reactions. Story 2 after. Redditor 1. Tell your bill. Poor guy. Op answer. He was told tonight, a few hours ago. He is obviously in bits plus his wife has said she wants to be with my husband. She is welcome to him. Redditor 2. Tell the brother. Send him proof. Then tell the AP you know. Don't tell your so. He'll figure it out soon enough. Redditor 3. The next time he starts spouting about how much he loves you, tell him if you really loved me, you'd do what I've asked, and give me some space. Op answer. Believe me, I have said that many times in the last few days. He is emotionally trying to blackmail me, saying his life will be over, no point being alive, etc. etc. Story 2. I think I'm finally done. Very long post, sorry. BS, here. In August I discovered the shocking truth that my husband of almost 20 years had been having a physical emotional love affair with another, much younger, woman. The affair went on for 3.5 years. The news came as a complete and utter shock to me. But on the other hand, in hindsight it isn't so surprising. The thing is, ever since we met each other, there's been an imbalance in our affection. I have always come last in his mind. I fell head over heels in love with him, but he did not completely return the feelings. He was openly, vocally critical about my appearance and never balanced the criticism by mentioning any good points I might have had. For the record, I am definitely not unattractive. I know it and have also been told so and complimented many times. For a number of years he also never displayed interest in things I was doing, never asking about those things or getting involved, although I begged him to be willing to do any things we could do together. He basically acted rather cold and dispassionate towards me most of the time. But still, he liked me enough for us to get married. And I truly loved him. Not long after we met, he became obsessed with watching soccer. He jumped into it fully. This included watching it full-time on TV, of course, recording games on video if there were 2 conflicting games at the same time, and watching one later. It also included holding season tickets and attending all games played by the local team here in a US city, where he did everything possible to be involved, including following them to matches out of town. He also got extremely involved in English Premier League soccer. At first I was interested in it too. And I was supportive. For example, 1 year early on, for his birthday, I surprised him with a trip to London to gather tickets to watch his favorite teams play live. That was fun and both of us enjoyed it. My interest in soccer wasn't as big as his was. His interest and involvement were extreme and grew into an obsession, where it became all soccer all the time when he was not at work. And he didn't care whether or not we shared this interest, or whether I was willing or able to keep up with that level of involvement. So it stopped being something we could share. Coupled with his full-time job, there was zero time left over for other activities, going to a movie or other activity together, for instance with me, us, or anyone else. Then he went on a trip to Mexico without me, to watch one of his favorite teams play. I wasn't invited. And other than that London trip and a couple of other trips that I paid for, he wouldn't go on trips with me. Not dates either, or any other activities. After a few years of the soccer obsession, while he showed little to no interest or attention to me or our relationship, I began to feel quite unhappy about being ignored, passed over time after time, and seeming so unimportant to him. I finally reached a moment where I said, "That's it. Do whatever you like. But I don't want to be part of an unbalanced relationship in which you matter a lot to me and I matter little or not at all to you." So I decided I wanted out. But he didn't want our relationship to end. For once he worked hard, for a while, on trying to put me and us first. And that helped, at least for a while. But then, not too long after the soccer obsession receded, he discovered a new passion. And this new obsession was one I could not really participate in much. My husband had studied to be a musician, a cellist, in college and grad school. But then, before we met, he decided not to pursue music, and went to med school instead, becoming an eye doctor. For the first 10 years I knew him, he barely touched a cello or any other musical instrument. He worked in a demanding, 6 to 7 day a week job. But suddenly, after he dropped the soccer, he rediscovered the cello. Then he decided to join an orchestra. Then another. And then another, then yet another. Plus playing in the pit orchestra for musicals. It got to a point where, in addition to his more than full-time job, he was absent from home all day and night every single day except occasionally one night here and there, doing his musical activities. Meanwhile, I was busy raising 5 kids, combined his and mine, working part-time, and writing a book, and I did have some friends and activities of my own. But I was lonesome a lot. And I wanted to spend at least some time together with my chosen life partner, with the man I loved, whose company I enjoyed above that of others. I did try getting involved in his orchestras, volunteering to sell tickets and/or usher, but I wasn't encouraged to do it. When at home, which he wasn't very often, he grew increasingly cold, distant, disdainful and removed, even more than he had ever been before. He also began going on month-long trips all over the world as part of a humanitarian aid group. I would have loved doing something like that together, but he said spouses weren't allowed. The kids grew up and moved out, one by one, mostly. I was left at home, alone most of the time. This was not my vision of how life with a partner was supposed to be. But if I ever tried to bring up the issue, he would shut down the conversation. But I still loved him. I loved his company whenever others weren't around, especially. More and more cello, rehearsals and performances for him, more and more time all alone with no one for me. It wasn't fun. I tried to stay active, but I still did get lonely a lot. Then D-Day happened and I accidentally discovered the affair he'd been having for 3.5 years. With another cellist, 15 years younger than he is and of course younger than I am. It was awful. Nightmarish. Because I had already asked him a few times if he was involved with someone else, and he'd always emphatically deny it. I discovered thousands of texts between the two of them. Gushing, romantic, loving, demonstrative, over-the-top, enthusiastic, complimentary, effusive texts, in which he praised her incessantly and frequently talked about how much he loved her. And how devastatingly beautiful she was. I've met her, she isn't. Since D-Day a few months ago, it seemed as if we made some progress towards possible reconciliation. He's been in therapy, for the first time in his life. He's been very contrite. Says he loves me, will do anything to make this marriage work. Cries a lot, so do I, of course. I thought things might be going okay until yesterday. Yes. Yesterday I made a discovery that feels like it sets everything back to almost square one. Basically, after D-Day he showed a great interest, for the first time in our relationship, in having S-time with me. And we did have S-time, quite a lot. That continued for a couple months. Then it kind of petered out. Eventually it stopped, since I believe that maybe one reason he hadn't wanted to have S-time with me for a long while was that I was unattractive to him. I had gone on a rigorous exercise and weight loss program with a personal trainer. Lost 30 pounds, got toned up, etc. I had bought S-timey lingerie that he said he really liked. Now, I feel that I was probably doing the pick-me dance. But at the time it seemed to work. He became interested, at last, in having S-time with me for a change. And I always enjoyed S-time with him. Always wanted him, even all that time he was dissonant and unavailable. So I was thrilled. But he has erectile dysfunction, and basically can't have S-time very often. If he has S-time to orgasm, he usually has to wait a few days in order to fully be able to recycle. So I began to dress S-timey and keep everything shaved, bathed, lotions and ready to go, so I would be attractive to him if and when he was ready. It's a lot of work and takes a considerable amount of time and effort to do that. But I did it and lived in hope. I chose not to initiate, because I figured he would do that when he was ready. Okay, I know, stupid, right? But for several weeks, despite my bathed, shaved, ready body ready and waiting for him to be ready and able, he's shown no interest in having S-time with me. Today I found out that he has indeed been having, although not with me. No, he's been having S-time with himself, with pornography. And all the effort and work I've been expending to stay ready, willing, able and attractive? All for nothing. And, failing a stress, he prefers to have S-time with his hand rather than with me. I feel extremely rejected. It feels like the last straw. Cumulatively, it's the final humiliation for me. I am ready to split up with him. I am ready to dissolve this joke of a marriage. I am hurt beyond measure. Redditor's reactions update after. Redditor 1, I'm sorry this man took 20 years of your life and strung you along through a sham. As I'm sure you know, you did nothing wrong and seem to be a loyal and devoted wife and mother. I know it hurts, but he lied about who he was. It's not your fault for believing. I see you found your strength and I'm wishing you the best of the best moving forward. It's amazing how far some people STBXH will go to disconnect from their own lives they chose for themselves. I'm sure he doesn't have a coherent reason for his behavior despite going into his 40s. Someone's gonna appreciate you being smooth as a dolphin. He wants to go FK himself? He can go right ahead. Redditor 2, leave him. He doesn't deserve you. While you were raising his children, he was of around the world having fun. WTF? I know it hurts, and it will hurt for a long time, but less and less with time passing. I was married for 25 years, and last few were dead bedroom. Throughout my marriage I was always shaved, lotioned, dressed up, lingerie, etc. So when dead bedroom happened I was baffled. He started getting involved with his hobby more and more, started traveling more. I was lonely. Desperately lonely. Long story short, last year at this time, I discovered that he's having 5-year affair. She's 23 years younger than me. Along those discoveries I found out that he was cheating on me most of our marriage. So I left. I didn't even try to reconcile. I left everything. What I can tell you now, after this horrible year of hurt, pain, emotional turmoil, pandemic, finding myself, etc., I am less lonely now. I live with my kid without the partner than when I was with my husband. This year was the hardest year of my life, and yet I'm happier than I was in a long time. Leave him. Find your happiness without that narcissist. Mine is narcissist too. It's going to be tough. You will cry, rage, be angry, sad, but you will not be lonely even if you live alone. If you need an ear or a shoulder, PM me. Hugs. Op answer, thank you. You obviously understand. I'm sorry that happened to you. Hugs. Yes, I look forward to being able to strike out on my own. Update, should I tell? I feel very tempted to tell the husband of the woman my husband had a secret 3.5 physical emotional affair with. I would want to know if the scenario were reversed. But the thing is, he's into guns, lots of guns. Scary. I don't want to somehow put myself into danger. What do I do? Redditor's reactions update after. Redditor 1, who cares if he's into guns as long as he's not into shooting people? If he was into cars, would you not tell her because you wouldn't want to get run over? Redditor 2, your husband and his wife are probably in greater danger than you. How well do you know this person? Is he prone to violence? People who are into guns aren't necessarily going to go on a shooting rampage. I'd do some background check first, find out more about the guy. If you do go ahead with telling, send the evidence anonymously, but give her a heads up first, so she can board a plane to Hutchinson, Tanika or Santa Fe. Update, how I discovered the affairs, how I found out, and how things went from there, so far. Betrayed spouse here, married almost 20 years. Husband had a 3.5-year physical affair and a 2-year separate emotional affair. D-Day was 6 months ago. Basically, he hid it well and I was naive. The way he managed it was basically just by lying about his whereabouts. He works at a very busy job, a type of doctor with irregular long hours at varying locations. Turns out, though, that many times he would pretend he had to be at work at, say, 9, when in reality he had to be there at 1. So he would go meet up with his affair partner. A few days he actually pretended to go to work, but didn't, and spent the day with her. But also he's a musician cello who had gotten involved in playing in several orchestras, causing him to be away even many more hours at more varying and unpredictable locations and times. The physical affair partner was another musician. Over time, the amount he was away for orchestra rehearsals and concerts had become an issue between us, but he kind of got me used to his absences gradually. I was like a frog in slowly boiling water, and just simply didn't see it. There were weeks when, between work and rehearsals and also seeing his affair partner, but I didn't know about that part. He was gone from early morning to late at night every day. I would complain, but he would convince me that music was his greatest passion and important as a stress reliever, etc., etc. I bought his arguments. When he was home, he was constantly on his phone or tablet, but since both he and I played a number of online games, I wasn't overly suspicious. I didn't like the amount he was on those devices, and I complained about it, but he didn't really pay much attention to the complaints. And in reality, he was actually also carrying on an emotional affair with a female co-worker who he saw frequently at work. So all this time on his phone and tablet, it turns out he was mostly texting these two women. As in, 20 or more texts daily at least, morning, noon and night. Lots of gushing comments about missing them, thinking they're beautiful, etc. It wasn't that I was naive or overly trusting in a way, because these behaviors built up over time and I just got used to them. But the texting ended up being his downfall. One day he accidentally left the volume up on his tablet, near where I was. I was trying to work, and that thing kept buzzing and dinging to the point of being annoying. I went to try and figure out how to shut it off, and a bunch of texts between him and the coworker popped up. They were flirty and suggestive, which made me look at more. So first I discovered the whole emotional relationship with the coworker. He had told the coworker about his physical affair, and they talked about it in their text conversations. That's how I learned of the physical affair. But of course that clued me into looking for messages between him and his musician affair partner, and, well, Nelly. It was extensive and outrageous. Messages all day and night on a variety of platforms, including email, messenger, text, WhatsApp, Viber, and others, including lots of love talk, photos, plans to meet, and just, well, everything. 3.5 years worth. Many thousands upon thousands of messages. I guess it was arrogant hubris on his part, that he hadn't deleted everything. But after doing stuff for a few years and getting away with it, you get careless. He got careless. I spent that afternoon, D-Day, while he was at work, reading over a lot of the stuff. I was beside myself, trembling, crying, freaking out. It was shattering, as you might imagine. Then I called him at work, a thing I rarely did because he was usually very busy always, and often in the middle of seeing patients. I basically said he needed to get home immediately, that it was an emergency. And when he got home I confronted him. That was almost 6 months ago. Since that time a lot has changed. We are still living together in the same house, for now, and have been working hard on the situation. Because he works with patients, we had already begun social distancing from each other at home during the summer, so we were already sleeping separately. I don't yet know how things will end up. He was really sorry, right from the start. And he has made many changes. His physical affair had already begun to wind down by D-Day. Although still telling each other they loved each other and planning to be together forever, they had stopped seeing each other much. She's married too. And all orchestra activity had already halted anyhow, due to COVID. He doesn't plan to resume it. As for the work emotional affair partner, he cut off communication with her immediately with a brief explanation to her and also made arrangements to no longer work at that location. He agreed right away to cut off all communication with either affair partner, and gave me free access to his devices to check. He began sharing location information with me. He made a detailed timeline for me, showing his activities during his physical affair. He and I both began reading all kinds of books about infidelity. He immediately began therapy, which was a first for him. Throughout our relationship before D-Day, I'd absolutely adored him, respected him, thought the world of him. All I wanted was for him to be around more, or to be willing to spend time with me, which he wasn't doing at all. And we actually had always gotten along really well when he was around. So, following D-Day, he began spending lots of time together with me. He arranged a nice vacation at a bed and breakfast for us. He got me flowers of first and other gifts. And I had very mixed feelings about the whole thing. I was and still am full of hurt, confusion and anger, and will continue to be for a long time. I will never trust him again, at least not fully. At some point I decided to give things a year, until the anniversary of D-Day, to decide what I want with a relationship. Meanwhile, I've been doing more for myself. I've treated myself in a variety of ways, including hiring a personal trainer to get into better shape for myself, not for him, enrolling in grad school to finish my degree, and buying things for myself like some nice clothes. Between us we have a lot of kids. We were both married once before, many years ago. They're all young adults. There's other family we're close to. Everyone knows. They're all made it high. He's apologized, and has been working on repairing those relationships. I don't know how things will end up. But one thing I'm glad about is having thus time to be able to process the trauma with the very person who inflicted the trauma, given that he's remorseful. If he weren't remorseful it wouldn't work. For that reason I'm glad I didn't just leave or kick him out immediately. For me, this works better. Update: anger with spouse as a reason for cheating. I don't know if I tagged this correctly, because it's a question for both wayward and betrayed partners. It boils down to this: for any of you, was the cheating an expression of anger at your spouse partner? Sorry this is long. If you make it through, thanks for reading. Anyhow, my wayward spouse and I have been working towards possible reconciliation for a little more than half a year. I haven't decided whether reconciliation is the direction I want to go. But it's what he wants, and he's been working very hard to try and make it happen. He's been in individual counseling, and part of what he's been working on figuring out is why he got involved in having the affair in the first place. Among the possible reasons, one that seems to resonate a lot is the idea that he had a lot of anger issues that he didn't recognize or examine, and that his affair was a passive-aggressive expression of anger towards me, or rather towards what I represented in his mind. For background, this is my husband's second marriage. His first wife was extremely abusive. I don't only know this because he said so, I witnessed it myself, and also heard about it from their children who, now grown, no longer speak to their mother. It's coming out in therapy that my husband also had some long-standing issues of resentment with his mother, and that he had a lot of ingrained animosity towards women in general. During our relationship prior to the affair, my husband's demeanor was always a bit emotionally flat, to such an extent that I, along with the rest of the family, suspected he might be autistic. He was especially that way with me. Even at the beginning of our relationship, he would not compliment me or express praise, admiration, or other things like that. This sometimes hurt, and I would tell him so. I would sometimes almost beg for a compliment or some demonstration of affection. He just wouldn't do it. He was very flat affect. But he would also sometimes be critical or controlling. And, significantly, his way of expressing displeasure was always passive-aggressive. Despite these things, there were other qualities in him that I loved, but these things were a problem for me. He would say that he loved me, but that was pretty much it. Through his job, my husband had occasional optional opportunities to travel around the country abroad doing a type of service work. As I say, these were optional. He always jumped at the opportunity to go. These trips typically lasted a month or so. I had some issues with these trips. 1. He would barely communicate when he was on them. 2. Each time he would go on one, I would be left alone to deal with whatever was going on at home, which was sometimes challenging. 3. Although I would miss him terribly, and said so, he would never say he missed me. 4. He made unilateral decisions to do these trips and was bound and determined to go on every one he could, regardless of how I felt. And 5, perhaps most of all, I was unhappy that he was never willing to go anywhere together with me. He was uninterested in traveling together with me. I was dissatisfied with this situation, but eventually I reconciled myself to it all, reasoning that no partner or relationship is perfect. It's my second marriage, so I knew something about that. And to me, the good times we had together made up for that. In my eyes, we were best friends and very compatible people who enjoyed each other's company. Except that over time we began spending less and less time doing things together. My husband also often got extremely involved, to an obsessive level, with hobby-type activities, none of which were things we could participate in together. With work and these activities, it often got to a point where he wasn't around much. I didn't like this, and complained about it. But no matter what, no matter how much he was gone, I still trusted him. One reason why I trusted him is that, from the very beginning, I had made it clear that the one thing I wouldn't be able to stand for in a relationship was being lied to. I had been lied to in the past, and it had been the worst experience of my life. I specifically told him that if he ever found himself attracted to someone else, or he ever had the urge to cheat, I would prefer if he came and just told me. I promised I would never punish him for being honest with me, even if it was something I didn't like or didn't want to hear. I said that no matter what, we would always find a way to work through anything, one way or another, so long as we were completely honest and upfront. I said I would always rather know than not know. Honesty was so important to me, we incorporated it into our wedding vows. So I did trust he would be open and honest with me, as I would always be with him. Fast forward a number of years, to D-Day and my accidental discovery that my husband had been having a secret 3.5-year physical emotional affair with one woman and a secret 1-year emotional affair with another. Needless to say, I was beyond shocked. I discovered the affairs because of messages between him and the affair partners. After D-Day, he gave me open access to his phone and devices. Unfortunately, a lot of things had been deleted, especially from the emotional affair, because of the long duration of the physical affair and the fact that they messaged daily, all day long from early morning to late at night, on a number of different messaging platforms. Many messages remained, as in tens of thousands. Here's the thing. All his messages to his affair partner were full of effusive, expressive, over-the-top language. He lavished non-stop praise and compliments upon her about anything and everything. If she sneezed, then it was the most beautiful sneeze the world has ever seen. The hyperbole was off the charts. Not only that, but he constantly told her how much he missed her, couldn't wait to see her, yearned for her, and so forth. And of course he spent a lot of leisure time with her, lying to me and saying he was at work. They had vague plans to eventually run off into the sunset together. In other words, his messages and actions were pretty much exactly and precisely the very things I had asked for, pleaded for and begged for during our entire relationship, and his 3.5-year deception broke the one cardinal rule of our relationship. It's like his entire affair was essentially a giant passive-aggressive FU towards me and our relationship, an intense expression of anger. This realization on his part during therapy and on my part in talking it over with him has been profound. I mean, the thing that's been tough to figure out has been the why of his actions. I know that's usually the case with affairs. It seems to almost be the case that more than anything else, his affair was an expression of anger, mainly targeting me. But why was he so angry at me to begin with? That's still a bit of a mystery. Unlike his ex-wife, I wasn't abusive. I was loving, caring, giving and demonstrative. It's true that over time I got discouraged with things sometimes, but that resulted more in me becoming depressed, and withdrawn sometimes, not abusive. So maybe he had some anger over that. If he did, he never expressed it. He just acted out in a big way. The affair partner is not particularly attractive or special in any way. She's kind of ordinary and not especially bright. She's married with 2 children, which makes me feel angry with her for doing it, and is mostly a dull, bored stay-at-home mom, although she does have the same hobby, playing a musical instrument in an amateur orchestra, as my husband, which is how they got acquainted. She's quite well off, lives in a big house, and is very status conscious, which I think was part of what attracted her to my husband. He's a doctor, while her husband is in a lower status but well-paid job. As is often the case, I'm objectively more attractive, more personable, smarter, funnier, nicer, and all the rest, compared to the affair partner. In the week following D-Day, my husband snapped out of the affair fog and limerence very quickly. Looking back, he says he doesn't know why he did what he did. He doesn't see why he was attracted to the affair partner. He can't access the part of himself that was so infatuated with her. He feels puzzled, ashamed and remorseful. I believe him. I'm very sad and full of anger myself now, but I'm interested in also trying to figure out the whys. His behavior towards me has changed immensely. I would have to say he has become the husband I always longed for: demonstrative, loving, passionate, engaged, involved, and so forth. He says he's learned so much. But he and I are both still trying to figure things out. And this idea of his passive-aggressive anger is one possible explanation. Or was he just generally angry at women and wife-mother figures in his life, and I happen to be the one he was with? I don't know. Anyhow, all of this leads to my original question, which is, in your experience, have you seen evidence of affairs as a way of expressing anger at the partner's spouse? Thanks for reading. I look forward to any input you might have. Update, positive post. Here's an encouraging post for those who are in the earlier stages of trying to recover from infidelity and reconcile. This was our second Valentine's Day since D-Day, when I accidentally discovered that my husband of 20 years had been having a physical-emotional affair for 3.5 years. Of course, this discovery was immensely traumatic. We've both been working hard on reconciling, with normal ups and downs. I'd say we've made steady progress for the most part. One thing we have done in order to recover has been to make sure and take the time and effort to do special things with each other, from going on dates to taking trips to celebrating special occasions. Last year our Valentine's celebration was fairly subdued, but nice. This year Valentine's Day was awesome. My husband planned an overnight trip to a surprise destination. It turned out to be a charming, wonderful bed and breakfast in a cute small town, in an area neither of us were familiar with. Our room was beautiful and included a giant jacuzzi. He ordered dinner in. We had champagne and exchanged gifts. He got me thoughtful things and wrote a couple of sweet cards. I also got him thoughtful thing. And surprise, one of the gifts we got each other almost the same thing. Merch from a particular TV show we both like. My husband said, "See, that's why we belong together." That felt good, but the surprise didn't end there. The next day he had scheduled a tour of an alpaca farm. When I tell you those are some of the cutest, most amusing animals I've ever seen, believe me. Then we went for a walk in a gorgeous nature preserve. We topped it off with another nice dinner. It was all just so great. The time, effort and thought my wayward put into it all was just so touching and meaningful. And additionally, on a daily basis he has been great too. He's working really hard on himself and it shows. We're both working on ourselves. It's so different from how things were for years before and during his affair. During that time he was gone most of the time, either working or doing any of a number of activities or working seeing his affair partner. On the rare occasions he was home he was distant and preoccupied, disinterested, disengaged, disdainful and always on his phone messaging affair partner, as I later discovered. I was confused, unhappy, lonesome, discouraged and depressed. What a difference. Friends, if you're trying to recover from betrayal, it does take a lot of work and time. But if both people are committed to making it happen, it can. I'm not trying to say it's all happiness and roses now. I still get badly triggered sometimes. We have good days and not so good ones. But overall it's moving in a positive direction. Redditor's reactions. Redditor 1, it sounds like you had a wonderful Valentine's Day and the work that the two of you have done is paying off. I also had a recent exchange of gifts with my BS where I gave them a shirt and they gave me a mug with the same phrase printed on them. We felt it was a nice surprise and we count it as an additional step towards recovery, that we connect beyond the shared recovery process. I hope to see your positive direction continue in future posts. Op answer, thanks. What a nice surprise that must have been. Best wishes to you as well. Redditor 2, I love this. Thanks for the update. We had a really lovely, no pressure day yesterday. Redditor 3, it is awesome that you see consistent progress and can sit in the joy with your spouse. Op answer, I agree. It is truly great. It can be a little hard to even believe, at times. Sometimes I'm even able to stop holding my breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Cautious optimism is gradually becoming less cautious and more optimistic.